Hey everyone, thanks for joining me in another watercolor video. I hadn't intended on uploading this one. I made this video for my own use. In case it turned out good or not good, I could kind of review it and see, either where things went right, went wrong, or both. Right now I'm just putting on a coating of water, and then of course I'm now doing initial first washes using some raw sienna. Now, I haven't done very many cityscapes, and so, I've done maybe a handful of them. So I'm still finding my way around. All of my stuff is, you're following me on sort of my journey. I've only been painting for a short time. So a lot of this stuff is, you know, where my progress is now. So some people saw this painting and thought, hey, I'd really like to see a video. And it's like, well, just so happens I did video it. And so I guess I'll share where I'm at because this is all about following me in my progress. So what I'm doing now is after I did draw this out, it's almost a must for a lot of cityscapes, or you're just going to be really off on different things like perspective and stuff. So I'm just doing some different washes just to get some different colors into the buildings and a few little different things with shadows. Forgive me if I don't remember maybe a couple things that I did and I don't remember. But a lot of this is just initial washes. And I have sped this up a little bit. Otherwise, this would be an hour long and it would be very, very boring. So maybe not to some of you, but I think an hour is way too long. So we're down to about a half hour. So in these initial washes, I'm just attempting to put in some shadows in different areas where I want light and dark. And I use a little bit of a spray bottle here and there just to keep things wet. This is on 140 pound Canson XL, and I'm using my palette is I use primarily Cotman colors, but I may mix in like some Daniel Smith colors. I use burnt umber, raw sienna, ultramarine blue, light red. I may use lemon or cad yellow, ultramarine blue. I think I said Payne's gray, some neutral tint. I may also use some Van Dyke brown. And for little accent colors, I might use some brighter colors like some cad red or pyrrole red from Daniel Smith. But for the most part, I stick to what we kind of refer to as the Ron Ranson palette, which is the 6 or 7 colors that I typically use. But I stay within the Cotman line. They're student grade, but they do work really well for landscapes. They're not super strong. Sometimes you want some really strong paints. Here I'm just, again, trying to put in some shadows, trying to find some light here. This was my idea as I was going along, just to give you my thought process. And again, this is all just me feeling my way around with doing these cityscapes. My problem is with doing cityscapes is that to me, like, and again, I like to do impressionism, but I like them to have an air of sort of realism to them. And as soon as you put in buildings or anything man-made, they just lose. They start to look like a cartoon or something very artificial. So for me, if I do landscapes they're city-based, they almost have to have sort of a surreal look to them. So you're turning a photo, like this is from a photo, into its own sort of work of art rather than trying to catch the realism of it. You're trying to just do something that in the end, for lack of better words, it looks cool. You look at it and you're really trying to figure out, exactly what is it that I'm seeing here. There might be some little elements that you catch. Of course, the big guys that, uh, you know, Alvaro Castagnat and Herman Peckel and Joseph Z, those guys. There's inspiration from them in here. I try to take several different artists that I've gone along and just learn their techniques, and that hopefully in the end I come up with something that looks uniquely my own because, you don't want to look like what everyone else is doing. You really don't in the end. Unless if you're just having fun and you just want to do, in your house, it's for your own use and that's it. But if you're ever going to sell anything or do any, displays of anything, it really should look uniquely your own. Otherwise, if you're just copying everybody all the time, you're just going to look like clones of theirs. But I believe you could take their techniques, adopt them, and then turn it into something that looks like yours. There's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. but you can definitely take a little, like a recipe when you're cooking. You don't invent new ingredients. You take similar ingredients and you come up with a dish, and you try to come up with a flavor profile. I like cooking too, so it's where that analogy comes through. So this is the Chicago Theater, and that's why I put the red sign there. I used some light red there. I probably would have used some Pyrrole red and made it really bright, but I'm trying to stick with mainly using my normal palette. And again here, this is taking longer than it probably really should if I 100% knew the outcome of what was going to happen. So this is what I suggest you do if you're watching me. You just keep painting these scenes and trying different things. There's a lot of trial and error and learning what you like and what you don't like. And that's what I did early on with landscapes. I watched Stephen Cronin, I watched Dave Usher, and just tons and tons of videos, and just trying to get, ultimately what I want to do is mostly the hake brush, so it has that freshness, and come up with an impression that's hopefully, again, my own take on something, where in the end I look at it and I say, oh, that looks cool, and you look at it hopefully and you'll say, oh, that's his, or oh, I could tell that looks like one of Stephen Cronin's. You want to separate yourself from everyone else, learn the techniques, and then keep on doing it on your own until it develops into something that is uniquely your own. So here again, I'm playing with a lot of different blends of dark and light. And it's important to try to keep the light, like in the back, there's not a lot of areas of light, like the top of the building in the back. I'm not really doing anything with sky back there. I'm just leaving that open. That's really the only main natural light source. And then, of course, on the ground where the lights are going to be for the theater, there's some artificial light going on there. So I want to have that dark and light balance so that you look at it and you're attracted to those light areas. Now, see, that building in the back is supposed to be Marina Towers, and I really, it's not even going to look like that in the end. But I got the building shapes, and I think that's probably where the most important thing is shapes. And if you can approximate those shapes early on, if you're going for total realism, then you have to paint every detail. But if you're going for an impression, then it should merely be the shapes. If somebody paid me to paint Marina Towers, it would have to look convincingly like that. But if I was doing an artistic impression of something that looked like a city block with a theater, all we need is some little nuggets, some little crumbs of that to look at and go, oh. If you had the picture of the photo next to it, you'd look at it and you can easily sit there and pick out and say, boy, this doesn't look like that. But you're trying to turn something into a painting. If you've ever taken, there's some really neat apps out there now where you can actually take a photo and it'll actually turn it into what looks like a painting, and it looks like brush strokes and things, and the computer can do that in all of 10 seconds. But here we're trying to do something that's handmade, obviously. So there's so many components that go into this as opposed to like a natural scene of nature. You have to have perspective and lighting right and things like that. Because it's art, there's a certain level of forgiveness. Windows don't have to be perfectly straight. You're just getting a feeling of them. But I think as time goes on, that will probably formulate into some better shapes. So again, I apologize. I'm not explaining everything I'm doing along the way. Some of it would just be a waste because it's just me trying some different things. But definitely trying to get some different shading in those buildings back there. More shading in the building in the front. The buildings are just really the set pieces of a backdrop. The focal point will be where the people are underneath the marquee. And this is from, I had visited there. We went and saw a comedian at the Chicago Theater, and I had taken some pictures. So this is based on that. I've taken, like, if just noticed I had a little toothbrush there, and that's kind of one of the things you'll see people do is flick little elements of color or flick little drops of water. And the reason that's done is to break up solid areas so they don't look so just the same color, just to get some variety in there. Some of that's lost by the time I get to the end of this video, but again, it's trial and error. And now I'm putting in some city lighting here, some little light posts. Just some little lamp posts here that are across the street over there. My thing is with doing, you can do naturescapes all day long and make stuff up, but I'd really like at some point in my artistic career to be able to go to a city scene or at least take a photo of it and be able to paint virtually anything. I think nature scenes, I'm not going to say they're easy if you're shooting for a little more realism, but they're definitely easier than doing buildings and things like that. They have to have some sort of feel that there's your eye sees it and you understand what's going on and your eye isn't too troubled by any discrepancies between what's real and what isn't. So you have to do something very surreal with a painting like this so that it's convincing. Otherwise, you're doing total realism and you're going to be there all day. And if you look back at any oil painters, painters, none of the scenes, if you broke it down by pixels, none of the scenes are, every detail is there. So the question remains is what you leave out and what you leave in and how abstract or how obscure something looks. And at the end of the day, if I look at it and I go, that looks cool, that's to me is good. If I look at it, I say, well, I'd like this to be a little, maybe the tones, if you look at the buildings going down the street, the distant building is good all the way down at the end of the block. It's looks like it's far down. The buildings along the street there should look progressively lighter. And they probably don't. You could probably say there's some artificial lighting going on there if you wanted to make an excuse up. This is where I believe the paintings, when you're doing a cityscape, starts to really come into focus. When you start doing little trees on the street and you start putting in the people and you start putting in street poles and things, that's when for me it really starts to make sense. And again, this took me a little over an hour. Most paintings take me a half hour of regular nature scenes. These scenes, as it stands right now, take me sort of twice as long because I'll keep going with it until I'm happy with it. And most paintings I do mostly with the rigger brush, or with the hake brush. There's a lot more different brushes in here. I've used rounds and riggers and things like that. So in the mix of doing my sort of nature scenes, I may mix in one of these like every 1 or 2 weeks just to have the mental strength to do it. I did draw this out on a separate paper first, and then I drew it out on the watercolor paper as a guide. You can see most of that's gone now. I think the 6H lead pencil, so when you wash it, most of the lines are gone. Around these light posts and trees and that, there's like little fenced off little areas where there's some growth. This was in a cold weather season, so there was no leaves on the trees. Again, I'm just trying to put in some more darks here. So I think for me, when I look at this painting and I sort of analyze what I'm doing with it, is probably the variances in the shading. It probably got a little too dark. and just the overall smoothness. I mean, I like the gritty effect. I think that's something I think that's good. I think the gritty effect is good. The shadowing probably could, not shadowing, but just a little brush strokes across, like across the street, and that probably could have had a little more color rather than just getting so heavy in tone. That could be improved upon. I think for me, they probably, I don't know, it sort of looks a little messy, and yet it has a cool vibe to it. So that's where I'm torn as I try to sort of just develop something that's my own. And I think that's what everybody should be doing, is just kind of feeling their way through, and then you look at that painting, go to the next one, and say, "Well, I really like how this came out," and try to. You have to retain this huge database in your mind of everything that you've ever done. Flicking water and little colors, and just a lot of little things, and things that you try on your own, and like, oh yeah, I should have did that, or I should have incorporated that in there. You know, See, now if you look across the street there, you see some purples and some little blue in there. I do use some cerulean blue, some cobalt blue for certain things. Cityscapes, you almost have to incorporate some different colors that are not in the normal palette that I use. Those are more for landscapes. Here I'm using some cad yellow so this stands out. And these are just little signs, so I'm just putting a little accent on there. I'm not necessarily putting little words on there. And here I'm just going to very quickly put in some of the people that are on their way to the theater. Later on, I'll come in, I'll just accent a little more color on them. I'm not sure if I'm doing that here or not, but I'll put a little touch of like blue, or some cerulean blue or pyrrole red. You could even use a little gouache on there to really make it pop and stand out. Because anytime there's people in there, that your eyes are you'll look at the whole thing, and then zoop, your eyes will just gravitate over to the man-made thing. Here I am putting a little cad red on this guy. Just put a little shadow underneath them so that they're sort of anchored to the ground. Obviously, the city street here is busier than that. I've left out. I do want to put a car in or off to the side. It's kind of a late addition, and it's not a very good car. You'll see. But there was definitely a lot more on the street, that day. But I mean, one car is, if you've ever been to Chicago, you can't throw a rock without hitting a car. There's just the streets are very, very busy. But I don't feel fully confident in my cars yet. I probably need to draw some more out. I really haven't gotten where I'm happy with them. I'm taking a little water and I'm wiping out. Kind of really quickly wiped out, lifted a little for the lights. But then what I'm going to do is come in with a little white gouache, and just highlight those lights so that they stand out a little bit more. I like using gouache. I mean, I'll use white. Some of those guys, they do use white, like very little white, but like I probably will use more. But you know what? I'm not looking to win awards or anything like that. It's not. This is for my own joy of doing. So I say do whatever tool turns out the painting in a way that you're happy with. Don't have to worry about the whatever society telling you, well, that's incorrect. I just watch a lot of artists and say, oh, that's a neat idea. I'm going to try that into my painting. I'm going to try that into my, and just like incorporate. You could have 20 different artists. The art you see today is hundreds of years of artists, what they passed down along the line. Back to the cave drawings. Just accenting little things with the white so that they kind of stand out against the background. Little highlights of white, and just touching little things on the fencing there. I don't have a super steady hand. It's hard for me to actually make a straight line. Now you'll see my poor attempt here trying to put a car in here. And I sort of like a cab maybe or something. You're going to drop people off. Try to put it toward the edge of the picture so that it's just kind of going off. It's not super focus. A little white for the window there. Sort of looks like a car of the future or something right now. Some wheels in there. Again, I need, I mean, for what this painting is, it probably fits in okay. But I'm definitely not happy with my cars at this point. Definitely fussed over this little car more than I really should have. Ultimately, what you want is you kind of want your stuff to look pro. At the end of the day, you don't want to look like this is something my mom would hang on her refrigerator. See, it's not too bad now, the car, but I'm not done trying to wreck it. There's a little yellow I'm putting on this figure here, just trying to make these pop. The reason I kind of jump around is that car, it has a lot of paint on it, so I figure I'll let it dry before I come back. So sometimes I'll kind of skip around. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. Look at something, stand at the back of the room. You know, you're focusing on this through a camera, we're pretty close, but if you stand at the back of the room, 10 feet away, let's just say. Something I've done before is I put like little cad yellow, little highlights in the window. Maybe it looks like lights are lit up. I think it adds a little color. I don't know. Now I'm just taking a little bit of this red and just like maybe the sign is sort of glowing a little off the side of the building and on the ground. Something just to get a little color in there. I mean, some of the pros will tell you you need to get your color in early on. But, I mean, that's their philosophy. In the end, you may disagree and say, you know what, you can do. And there's artists that go light to dark and dark to light. And, I mean, in the end, if the work turns out good, then that's great. And again, I'm not done destroying this car. Just a hint of it would have been fine. Had I remembered I wanted to do the car from the beginning, I probably would have left that area a little lighter, or left a little white around that area. I'm not really good with leaving white for little details like that. I'd almost rather do what I got to do and then like lift it out or something. It's just to have to leave every tiny little bit of white. This was sort of my attempt to put maybe a car way down the street. A couple little red lights on the back of the car. It's hard to see in a video. Things dry and then you come back, you're like, oh, I still want that figure to pop a little more. Let me get a little more yellow. So you're kind of layering things. There's a lot of detail. This is why I like nature photos or nature paintings, because there just isn't this type of detail. Again, just dropping in little, just trying some different things, and then if I like it, if I don't like it, I'll correct little things. So one of the things that was sort of missed in the edit was the buildings in the back, I applied like a white milky gouache wash to push those buildings back a little bit. And so now I'm just kind of retouching up the tree and the couple of light posts in there. But I wanted to fade those buildings back a little bit, so that they just weren't so standing out so much. And when that dries, it'll make areas that you do that to look a little more pale. I should have done that before I, painted in the lamppost and stuff. But once I got the foreground done, I could tell it was just something I could tell more what I wanted to do with that. Just retouching up the lights. Just again highlighting the little figures and things. And again with the weird car. If I get aggravated enough with it, I'll sit down and I'll just paint cars all day long until I get it. I used to play with little Matchbox cars when I was a kid. You'd think I'd be pretty good at it. I had a pretty big collection of them. I don't know what happened to them. Probably would have been worth money today. Now here I was going to try to put in some windows. I took a round brush. Wasn't really thrilled with it. I kind of wanted to put in just a few more windows there and have those kind of accent out a little bit. Just a little bit of dry brush. So we're nearing the end here. I do appreciate everybody watching. If you have any comments, good or bad, leave them in the comments section. Any tips or something that you see, you say, hey, this could be. I don't have anything. I mean, I'm going along with this. This is my journey. This is my enjoyment, and I'm sort of documenting this. If you watch my Instagram, you can go back. The first few months I don't have on there, but I've had probably a year's at least worth of, and you can see the progress and the changes in the style as I went along. Back to fiddling with the car again. Again, just highlighting little certain things. Hope you found this video interesting. I'm interested watching myself back again. So let's put a little mount on here and kind of see how it looks. Just before I do that, I just want to make sure everything's dry. I mean, me personally, I think it looks kind of cool, but I know where I want to tweak things. There it is with the mount. Always makes things look better. And here's the finished one, and here's the smoke in the street. And here it is in a frame. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it.